Hi and welcome to Greenway Chambers. This is a Q&A webinar about virtual hearings, both on television and by video. I'm Ian Roberts and I'm your host today, and I'm joined by two panellists, Adele Carr and Dinesh Ratnam, both of whom are from Greenway Chambers. If you're wondering, we are practicing COVID-19 restrictions, isolating ourselves within the same room. They are on the other side of the room and I'm over here. Some weeks have now passed since we all began to operate remotely, and since then many of you have conducted and participated in virtual hearings, whether telephone or by video. These are some questions that you've asked of us based on our experience, how best to prepare and present a virtual hearing. The first question comes from Christian Roberts of Roberts & Partners, and he asks, how are documents tendered in a virtual court?
That question tends to arise during cross-examination in circumstances where a document hasn't made its way into a court book for obvious reasons, because you don't want to give a witness notice of the contents of a particular document. There's two ways you can do it. The easiest way is to email, so make sure you convert the document into a PDF and email it to the judge as associate for formal tendering before the judge. Make sure you email it to the witness and to your opponent, and that way everyone has access to it. Or alternatively, you can have the document in a shared document platform accessible for everyone to inspect at some point, such as Dropbox. So when you're ready to cross-examine on the document, you just make it accessible, ready for people's accessibility.
And this also comes up when you might want to refer to an additional authority outside of the list of authorities that you've previously provided the judge. So again, using Dropbox or email, but if you do use email, making sure that nothing of substance or controversial is included in that communication.
During a telephone hearing, you obviously can't see the judge or the opposing party. What are the tips you've got for people conducting telephone hearings to overcome the lack of the visual cues that one normally gets in a real face-to-face hearing?
Well, with telephone hearings, you obviously can't see one another, so you do miss the visual cues. You can't read the judge can't read you, and most importantly, you can't size up your opponent because you can't see them. Telephone hearings I've found are quite hard because everyone tries to talk over one another, so I think you have to be very measured and you have to train yourself to be patient. Let your opponent finish their submissions. Let there be some silence before you speak. I also think when you're not submitting, put the mute button on. I put the mute button on because when I'm appearing at home, if I don't have the mute button on, the judge is going to hear the next door neighbour's German shepherds barking at one another, so you want to try and eliminate that background sound.
Well, it's very important though that you do press the mute button and not the hold button, which is what I had the other week when opposing counsel pressed the hold button. And while the opposing counsel was getting instructions, the judge said, "Ms. Carr, I think we're being serenaded by hold music." But you did make an interesting point with respect to allowing the other side to finish making their submission before making your own. And that can be difficult to do when you are appearing by telephone. So you can assist the judge and the opposing side by structuring your argument. And that might be identifying by way of a roadmap. You have 3 points to make. Or if you're asked a question, simply by saying, "If I can answer the question in this way," indicating that you've only got 1 point to make.
Well, with that said, is there anything that we should be mindful about video virtual hearings?
Actually, Registrar Walton asked me to convey, for the purposes of this webinar, a few things actually. With virtual hearings by audio-visual, remember, court is in session. So that means don't turn up in your punk attire or your grunge attire. Apparently, people are still turning up to directions hearing in mufti, so just remember, court is in session, so dress appropriately. If you want to do your Ron Burgundy anchorman presentation, that's fine. No one can see what's down below, but make sure whatever anyone can see is presentable. The other thing too, you still have to be formal at court, so during directions hearing, don't refer to your mate as Steve or Bob. Last name, be formal. Just remember, court is still in session and there's no need for informality. Particularly with sound, Registrar Walton actually mentioned that it's probably better to use those headphone microphones, and I tend to agree with that. So during hearings, you can hear better, and whoever's listening to you will hear it much better because the sound is just far better amplified with a microphone headphone.
And to assist with formality as well is to think about the background behind you. You might have those exercise bikes and guitars, but it might be better to have a selection of books, whatever they might be. They don't have to be law books.
So no golf bag.
This from an anonymous solicitor. Changes have been made to the technology and construction list whereby matters that aren't disposed of by consent, motions and directions and the like, are dealt with on the papers. How do you suggest these position papers are approached, Adele?
The T&C list is a very busy list and you don't have much time to put your position forward when you are in person, so your approach should not change to these position papers. They are referred to as position papers, but they shouldn't be drafted in a way that you would for a mediation position paper. The practice note just requires you to identify the issues and your client's position. So, as we always should with any directions in preparation, speak with the other side, identify the real issues so the position paper is brief, and then the competing orders which you annex to that position paper visually identify the issues, maybe in another colour, so that you don't have 3 sets of competing orders attached to the one position paper.
Matthew Youssef from Ashurst asks this. You can expect witnesses may already find it difficult to work through electronic documents. So in a virtual court, how should you prepare a witness for cross-examination with the expectation that they may or will be taken to an electronic court book? Dinesh?
Well, solicitor intervention more so than ever is vital now. I think solicitors need to make sure that the court book is prepared well in advance of a hearing. The reason why well in advance is because you want to make sure now in this digital age that you want to get the court book out to the witness or your client to confirm whether they actually have a computer device that's capable of recognising a large court book. For example, if it's a 5,000 page court book, some devices just can't manage that. So you want to ensure that their device can recognise that. And once you've passed that hurdle, I think solicitors should invest some time with a witness and navigate them through a court book, because you don't want to cross-examine or training them during a hearing on how to use a court book. With that said, I would also ensure immediately before a witness is going to give their evidence that you should ensure that they've already uploaded the court book onto their device, because you don't want to start a cross-examination of a witness and spend 20 minutes waiting for them to upload their court book.
Nicholas Kalapalidis of Coleman Gregg asks, now we can't pull on counsel's robes and pass little pink post-it notes to them. What's the best way that a solicitor can effectively communicate and pass instructions to counsel during a hearing when they are appearing remotely from their studies and I'm in my living room at home?
I don't know why Nick referred to pink post-it notes, because he's very good at tugging on my robes during hearings. How I appear in a virtual court, I actually have 2 computer screens. So I'll actually have one screen that will project the virtual courtroom, and on the second screen I'll actually have the court book on the second screen. You could use that screen to access your email so you can actually communicate with your solicitors, or alternatively you can use Messenger or some type of text message facility on your computer device. Alternatively, you can go old school and text message your solicitors via Messenger, for example. I actually found last week I was in a hearing, it was actually quite difficult to engage in a dialogue with my instructing solicitor via text messages because I can't type fast. So I aborted text messages and I then went to my iPad. So I ended up using 3 screens, and on my iPad I communicated via FaceTime so we could actually engage in a dialogue. So those are some of the options that are available to you.
There certainly are many platforms. I've also used WhatsApp Messenger as well, where you create a group beforehand. But what's important is that when you are in a hearing, particularly if it is going for a few hours, that you do try and just use one platform. Because I did have a virtual hearing where I started using text and then ended up using email, and I was appearing by myself with my instructing solicitor elsewhere, and I need to seek some instructions, and I was doing it on both platforms. So just to streamline it, just try and use one if you can. I think when social restrictions ease that we will be going back to court in person, but there certainly will be a larger uptake of virtual hearings, whether that be video or by telephone. I think we'll certainly see this where counsel, instructing solicitors and witnesses, and even the trier of fact, whether it be a judge or an arbitrator, are located in different areas. In terms of the platforms that we're using and the efficiency, I think we will see a greater uptake of those platforms where we are able to run proceedings from the beginning, particularly with pre-action discovery, and we can conduct mediations virtually and all the way to the end with hearings as well.
Well, thanks Dinesh and Adele, and thank you all for tuning in. That's all we've got time for today. Hopefully we'll be doing another one of these sessions in due course, so if you've got any ideas about what we should cover, please let us know. If you've got any questions about anything we've covered today, by all means contact us. Until next time, bye for now.